Hello all, today we are going to discuss about the topic, social knowledge. To negotiate our social world successfully, we must not only understand the rules for appropriate behavior, but make choices consistent with those rules. How do we know which aspects of knowledge to apply to a particular situation? If our own interests conflict with societal norms, deciding how to proceed can be difficult. What can the brain systems used to make these sorts of decisions tell us about this psychological process? One of the most complicated aspects of social behavior is the lack of straightforward rules. The very same behavior that is appropriate in one context may be wildly inappropriate in another. For example, hugging a close friend is an act of affection, but hugging a stranger may be considered intrusive. And should you hug someone you are getting to know better but do not yet consider a close friend? Or how about that guy you have a crush on? When is it appropriate to greet a person with a hug? Social cognitive neuroscientists are just beginning to research the neural systems that help us make these decisions. Current research findings suggest that the frontal lobes are important. Orbitofrontal cortex. Patients with OFC damage have the most difficulty when they need to draw on their social knowledge to make sense of social interactions. Valerie Stone and her colleagues developed a social faux pas task that measures a person's ability to reason about the world. The task presents participants with a series of scenarios in which one of the characters commits a social faux pas by accidentally saying something impolite. One scenario tells the story of Jeanette and Anne. Jeanette bought her friend, Anne, a crystal bowl for a wedding gift. Anne had a big wedding and there were a lot of presents to keep track of. About a year later, Jeanette was over one night at Anne's for dinner. Jeanette dropped a wine bottle by accident on the crystal bowl and the bowl shattered. "I'm really sorry. I've broken the bowl," said Jeanette. "Don't worry," said Anne. "I never liked it anyway. Someone gave it to me for my wedding. Did anyone say something they shouldn't have said or something awkward?" Stone and her colleagues gave this test to patients with orbitofrontal damage, patients with lateral prefrontal cortex damage, and healthy control participants. In comparison to all other participants, patients with OFC damage did not perform as well on the test, thus demonstrating a decreased ability to apply their social knowledge to the scenarios. Instead, they often believed that Anne had intended to hurt Jeanette's feelings. The patients with OFC damage were not as able to take the context into account when reasoning about the social mistakes. These results suggest that OFC damage impairs the ability to use social knowledge to reason about social interactions. In a study by Jennifer Beer, patients with OFC, patients with lateral prefrontal damage, and healthy controls took part in a structured conversation with a stranger. Compared to the other participants, patients with OFC damage were likely to introduce impolite conversation topics. Before beginning the social interaction task, however, all the participants reported that it was inappropriate to discuss emotional and personal information with strangers. The patients with OFC damage were unaware that their actual social behavior violated these social rules for conversations with a stranger. In another study, patients with OFC damage and healthy control participants took part in a teasing task that required them to make up nicknames for an experimenter. Healthy control participants were careful to come up with flattering nicknames and to apologize for having to tease someone they did not know well. In contrast, patients with OFC damage offered unflattering nicknames and were likely to announce them in a sing-song voice. OFC patients were not embarrassed by their inappropriate teasing, but they reported feeling proud of their social behavior. Without awareness of their social mistakes, patients with OFC damage never generate the emotional feedback they need to change their future behavior. Findings suggest that even though patients with OFC damage report an understanding of social rules, they do not apply this knowledge to their own social interactions. They also fail to recognize that their behavior is inappropriate, as they lack self-insight and do not generate the social emotions needed to correct their social mistakes in future social interactions. Today we have discussed about the topic social knowledge, and we understood the important role of orbitofrontal cortex. Hope this was an informative session. Thank you.